Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my own, I guess, pack of Remore eels or something like that. He's my little fish swimming around with me. It's Tom. What's up?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us, King Shark himself. It's David Griffin. What's up, buddy?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
It would be more exciting if you could talk like Ron Funches. I just want you to know that, but that's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right, David. We're glad to have you here. We're going to talk about fixing IDK tonight.
As always.
But also, of course, the news, and that's where we're going to start. We have like the smallest amount of news. Just that
Talking
much.
about seafaring,
Yeah,
we got a rumor engine.
we do. It's up on the screen.
So, David, what do you think this is?
Sure.
I can't see the screen. I was literally clicking to go pull up the
Yeah.
YouTube channel
Yeah,
as you called my name.
That's what I do. I just watch us on YouTube because Vince isn't able to actually show us the rest of the screen.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
give me like 30 seconds and come back to me.
That's fine.
that's fine. Tom, what do you think?
Uh, I think that this is it strikes me. Let me say this. It strikes me as something flesh eater quartz.
Okay. All right.
Because it's like a batty foot, like a Vargol foot or something.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. I want to say like vampirates, but I don't know.
All right.
It looks flesh eater quartz.
Okay. All right.
It's vampires. Totally.
All right.
It's the werebat vampires.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Why not?
All right. Well, sadly, Martin Orlando in the chat actually said what I was going to say. But to me, this is Kurnothi, baby. We're getting the army. This is it. This is confirmation. That little dew claw, it's too wild. You look at the coloration on this thing, the way it comes down into a darker color, like it's the natural creature, like they like to paint those kind of things. Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's on some kind of ruins, which is going to be in the middle of something natural, like jumping off of a thing. It's clearly very mobile, like as this thing is up in the air.
Very Kurnothi-esque. Unless
Yes.
this is flying, then this is one of the touch points of the flyers.
Could be.
A la, the Canary.
Sure. So hence, absolutely Kurnothi. To me, this is boom. We're getting the army that we've wanted. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lock it in now. Pick of the week. There it is. Lock it in. Kurnothi.
All right, hot take.
I'm ready.
It's a Vargol with a Kurnothi in its mouth.
Right on.
I like where your head's at.
It's a deep fake.
Sure. It could certainly be something for Warcry or something for Underworlds or anything like that as well, of course. Always. But I'm going to hold out hope just because I really do think the Kurnothi were a great idea, and I do hope they turn them into their own army. I think it's such a cool concept.
Yeah.
And
Pass.
it just feels like it'd be an easy win. So
Pass.
you're such a negative Nancy, Tom. That's what I have to say
Well,
to you. People love the Kurnothi.
It is not an army that appeals. As I teach my kids when they have food that they don't like, it's not a flavor that I like. For me, the Kurnothi are just not a flavor that I like.
Gotcha.
Like,
all right.
It's not much like IDK. It's just not. It's not my jib. So.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I mean, if they're as long as they're all like Olympic hurdlers, like the guys in the Warcry band, then I'm in.
Absolutely. Everybody in this army is going to be jumping, diving, duck or dodge, duck, dive, dip, and dodge. Yes, correct.
Perfect. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right. What else?
So, giants are coming.
Yeah. So we've started to see they're putting out the little teasers this week for what I hope means that we're going to get the pre-order announcement on Sunday, that they'll be up for pre-order next Saturday, which would mean they would come out the week after that. That would seem to be what they're signaling here, and that would basically align with the Black Library novel. So just to put dates on that for everybody, that would mean that they announce the pre-order on the 27th, for pre-order on the 3rd, to ship on the 10th, when we know that when we know that the book is already coming out. So when you look at the dates like that, that seems to make sense. So I, for one, am excited for our new giant overlords. That's what I'll say. So, I mean, these can't get here soon enough. Will be, at the point it releases, the longest teased army in history. At 10 months since we saw the first, since they actually confirmed that they were happening, and even longer that they were a rumor.
Yeah.
So, let's make this happen. Let's make this happen, folks. You know, just a quick note on these Mega Gargants. I saw somebody take the Alarith Stone guy, the walking mountain from the Lumineth range, and turn him into a Vermin Lord by using, because the Vermin Lord head sits on that mountain pretty well. Like, it's got a nice, the angular aesthetic of the horns and stuff fits really well with the sort of triangular shoulders. And, you know, then you just swap the hands and you're good to go. And I really loved that, and it made me think about whether or not you could put that Alarith Stone King together with some of these Mega Gargants to get, like, because he's probably that size. I don't know how big he is. If somebody who has one of those Alarith Stone Kings could please give me a measurement of that dude, and
small.
how big he is. Is he really?
I think he's too small. Yeah, I think he's like Tree Lord size.
Is that all he is?
Yeah,
I need an inches count.
I will say that Vermin, he works better as a Vermin Lord than he does as a Lumineth.
Sure, because the Vermin Lord are like, he looks really good as a Vermin Lord.
Yeah,
those rocks can all be Warpstone. Like, it's such a slam dunk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's the new sculpt of a Vermin Lord to me.
Okay.
So you're saying that he fits more within chaos than order?
Stop it. I reject your reality.
Yes.
No, it's okay. It's true.
Well, I was just thinking this last weekend, as I finished, or, you know, I rebased all my Skaven and I got him out on the table this weekend, and I was like, you know, I really need more Vermin Lords. I don't have enough of them. And I was like, oh, I could order more of that kit or whatever. And then I saw that conversion and I was like, wait a minute.
Yep.
Am I going to have to buy an elf thing?
You have my attention.
Yeah, exactly. So, so there you go. All right. Cool beans. Nothing else to say about that. Be here now, Giants. There you go.
In tangential Warhammer news, we got the spoiler on the Hero Quest.
Yeah, this isn't even really Warhammer news. It's just of such interest to me because of its previous connection to GW that I have to talk about this. All right. So we mentioned it last week. It's tangential. Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned it last week. All right. I have problems. Okay, here we go. All right. So let's get into this. I hate everything about this, from top to bottom.
I'm not the negative Nancy here. I'm going to go on record.
This is all me. Here we go. I hate everything about this Hero Quest project that they're doing. Okay, and don't get me wrong. Hasbro as a company, or Wizards underneath them at least, make some of my favorite things. Okay, so this isn't an indictment of that. However, this is straight up awful. Let's start. Here we go. Okay, so Hero Quest is a classic game. It was the game that got me into D&D. It was the game that got me into all of this. I loved it. I played hours and hours of it. I think it's an amazing game. Obviously, I agree with Bardic Broadcast that it is one of the greatest games of all time. This is such an affront to everything that should be done with that game, because their big 10-day lead-up announcement was to their own personal Kickstarter. Not through a normal Kickstarter, but through their Hasbro Pulse, their little personal Kickstarter site, where they decided to hold your money ransom. We'll hold this game ransom until you pay us $1 million. That's literally what it was. We're not going to make this game until you pay us $1 million. That is literally how ransoms work. Okay? And this is a company worth $4.72 billion with a B. That was their net revenue in 2019. Their net profits were $650 million last year. That is 2 Games Workshop's total revenue, to put that into perspective. Okay? That's what we're talking about here.
Woof.
Their
Hasbro,
revenue is two games
their,
work.
no, their net
worth.
profit is
Yes.
is
Oh,
2
yes.
entire revenues of Games Workshop.
Woof.
Okay? They are the largest game manufacturer in the world. Okay? And the thing about all of this would have been they hit their goal in like a day. Okay? They hit that $1 million goal in a day, because of course they did. Okay? But the entire thing is just sour to me, because they can just make a product and put it out there. You don't need to do this. That's ridiculous. Also, I'm not sure about the price point on it. $100 and $150. I don't know what it'll retail for, but that's pretty whatever for like what's supposed to be a board game. Classically, this board game was not a huge amount of money. Adjusted for inflation, that could be correct or couldn't be correct. I didn't look at that. But the fact that they couldn't actually even make one copy of this, okay, to show people as part of their fake Kickstarter, I saw a bunch of people sharing it going, wow, the models look amazing. No, they don't. There are 0 real models they showed you. You know what they showed you? Digital renders. I could make a digital render of an amazing model. Right. And that doesn't mean anything. It means less than nothing. Okay? This massive company couldn't build a prototype and go get some figures cast to show what they're going to look like to give you the real thing.
They are not as far along as most Kickstarters.
Correct. Who always have to start. You like, if you're running a Kickstarter, as we have, right? Yes. You have to actually go make a prototype. You have to show things. You have to say, look, this is why you should believe in me, right? But instead, they just threw out digital renders and said, this is what the mini's going to look like. No, they're not. They won't be that sharp. They won't be that crisp. They won't be that clean. I have no reason to believe you will do that. That you will invest the money to get the highest of quality resin casts out of those things. Okay? I just don't. Why would I? Right? And the fact that then on top of all of that, and then like the aesthetics, we can talk about the aesthetics of the minis for days. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't. They had to clearly divorce them from GW Aesthetics because they don't have that partnership anymore. So I guess just wholesale stealing the aesthetics of like Pathfinders, goblins, and Magic the Gathering's goblins with their giant heads and everything else like that was just the low-hanging fruit. I guess they just looked at Wayne Reynolds' art and was like, you know what, let's just do that. Just do that exact thing.
I mean, it's Hasbro, which Wizards is part of, and so they're like, "Yeah, we already own this."
Right. So they just, I mean, they're just Magic goblins. Like, I get it. So they threw like 4 cards at the digital artist and said, "Yeah, make them look like that. That's good. Make them look like just 24th century giant, like WoW influenced giant sword nonsense." So super cool. Okay, like completely uninteresting to me as far as the aesthetic goes. I will give them credit. I did really like that they have in the box like the both versions of the heroes, like the gender swap version of the heroes. That seemed pretty cool. They look like nice alternate sort of takes on them. I thought that the female dwarf actually looked pretty rockin'. You don't see a lot of good female dwarves. If the model actually looks anything like that, which I have no reason to believe, it'll be a cool model. And then finally, it seems to be, you can like buy in and get the 2 expansions right away. And by all accounts, it seems to just literally be the original game. It's just the original game. It's the same number. It seems like
they're literally releasing the original game with the same expansions.
Same expansions, same adventures, same everything. Okay? Did somebody just like go look on eBay one day and go, hey, original pretty intact Hero Quests are selling for like hundreds of dollars. Should we just remake this thing and make a big deal out of it like we did work? And somebody else was like, genius. We can just do nothing and put this out there and print money. But let's do it as a Kickstarter just to make sure, because somebody in an department was like unwilling to even take the most minor of risk. Okay? And so the fact, like, look, I love Hero Quest. I really do think it's one of the best design games of all time. However, it's been 30 years. 30 years, folks.
This could have been a great partnership opportunity, too.
It could have been, sure. But, like, there have been advancements in dungeon crawler board games. This isn't a rare thing anymore. Like, it spawned, to a degree, a whole genre. Right? And there's a lot of dungeon crawler board games out there, some of which, lots of different cool mechanics and lots of different updates and different ways to do things. They could have integrated any of that stuff. They could have created new, interesting ways to, like, I like that they have one whole board instead of just building the tiles. I'm not saying it had to be a tile game. That's fine. But they could have even done like a double-sided board.
Yeah, like the Diabloification of like the randomized questing
Yeah.
of like a lot of games. Like it's just disappointing. Like that's a tech that exists, right?
Yes.
That Silver Tower monopolizes and like all the D&D board games and stuff like that. And it's surprising to me that like this is where they landed.
Yeah.
That
So
they just as a pure remake, which like again, I love it too. Like don't get me wrong, and I'm probably gonna back it. But it's just disappointing. Like it could
no
have been so much more.
way in the universe, in everything from under heaven to above hell, this gets any dime of my money. You can take like get out of here. And uh there's just no way I would support this kind. This is just straight up bad. Period. And like, look, if you never got a chance to play Hero Quest and you want to play Hero Quest and so you're willing to do this, I get it. Fine.
I'm gonna play with my kids.
Sure.
So
like,
nah.
I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't. Okay. As always, it's your money, and I'm never going to say you're spending your money wrong. If you find value in it, fantastic. Right. Like I'm very happy for you. But there's no way I would give this money. Okay.
As an aside, you didn't even get to probably one of the most offensive things for a lot of people, in that it's only available in North
Oh,
America,
the
in
U.S.
Canada.
and Canada, yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
if you want to ship it to anywhere that's not US, it's $115.
What?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Oh,
like
yeah.
shipping to Canada was like 115 or 125.
Wow.
Yes.
Yep.
Jesus.
So good stuff all around.
And then if you're not in the US and Canada, like Europe, you can't buy it.
So like maybe just actually release a product next time. Put it on store shelves, advertise it, like you do. Like companies do. So next time you ever want to complain about anything that GW does, and I'm not saying they're perfect, but I will say at least they're not like, hey, we're doing this new army if you give us $1 million. Okay. We'll do the Kurnothi if you fill the Kurnothi Kickstarter on our special site. UK, US, and Australia only. And in Australia, it's $400 to ship you the army.
Well, for GW, it's the Citadel Treasury. That is their
The Citadel Treasury.
that's their Kickstarter website.
Yeah. So at any rate, there you go. Hero Quest rant over. Now I'm never going to talk about this again. That's what it comes down to. Because I will now move on and forget about this. So I was excited until everything was wrong.
Until I busted out at our next D&D marathon. I'm like, hey guys, want to play some Hero Quest?
I will just flip the table. I can't flip my table. It's too big, but I'll sweep it off the table. Would
Well,
literally be
luckily
impossible to flip my table.
Luckily, my resin terrain that comes with it will survive the fall, unlike
Yeah.
my cardboard terrain.
Absolutely. Anyway, okay, that was the end of that news. I saw this and I was like, well, I cannot allow this cannot abide. It cannot. So here we are. That's rant over. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So let's. I don't think there's any other big news. It's been quiet, obviously. Let's talk about some pick of the week. David, what would you like to share with everybody?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working on the side. I've been painting a Beast Claw Raiders army that's like heavily converted to be kind of herd themed. So there are these like giant like frost lords that are actually just giants, and they're like herding Stonehorns and Mournfang and stuff. And so
Okay.
all of the monsters and mounts and stuff have been like sculpted to remove all like straps and saddles and that kind of stuff. So they're actually just like beasts. And then and so I'm doing this as a commission paint job, and we want them to look really like icy and cold. And I used the Terrain Tutors like slushy snow tutorial. It's if you go on and look at his High Peak Pass playlist. He goes through and does a lot of different snow techniques, but there's one in particular that's really good. It's that results in this like slushy, icy snow
I
mix.
love it. I love that. I love that video, and I love his technique there. Yes.
Yeah. So I've been doing that, and it took me a couple tries, but it's really good, and it's been a fun project to work on.
Nice. That's fantastic. I cannot recommend that video enough. I will link specifically to that video out there because that is wonderful.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you got? What do you want to share with everybody?
I got nothing this week.
Okay.
I have nothing of significance to share.
You have nothing of significance to share. All right. Well, fortunately, I'll share two things. So I'll cover for you, Tom. Yes. Here you go. So first off, I want to give a shout out to John Ninus and Scott Miniac. Their most recent podcast that came out, Trapped Under Plastic, was all about them recounting the weekend where Sam and I were hanging out with them and we worked on that project we work on. So if you want a fun time of them just sharing the story of hanging out for the weekend, there you go. That's the podcast to do it. Most of the podcast is just them talking about us hanging out, and it was a really fun time. The other one I will mention is for those who are not aware of Juan Hidalgo Miniatures, or JH Miniatures. I'll link his channel. He does a lot of really fantastic tutorials, especially if you are interested in painting in what I would call the GW style. He's really good at how he breaks it down. His tutorials are really high quality. But he recently had me on his channel and interviewed me, and it was a fun interview. So check out his channel if you want to see that interview. He sort of turned the format that I use on me, but he had some different stuff. And but in general, I would much more recommend his channel. Like if you want to, his recent video on doing red non-metallic metal was absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. So check it out. So both the Trapped Under Plastic podcast and his channel will be linked below. Yeah, there we go. So there you go, Tom. I'll cover for you.
Sweet.
All right. So let's talk about some hobby time, guys. David, what are you working on, buddy? What's on your table, man?
Lumineth. So my first true love with Warhammer back when I was 12 was the old High Elf Spearman, the little like monopose like spear, big giant hands and big fat spears. And so when Lumineth was announced, I got really excited, and then got less excited about the cow stuff, and then got excited again when I realized I could build an army without any cows. So I'm working on, building up a 2K army of mostly the Venari stuff, and building up Teclis, and gonna do a nice repose of Teclis and all of that. And yeah, it's good. I've painted up a couple of units. Have a fun paint job. Kind of takes me into different colors I haven't done before. And yeah, this army's got me really jazzed up, keeping the hobby juices going for sure.
That's awesome. And yeah, it is interesting that army can be either very classic high elf looking if you just basically lean into the Venari and Teclis, or it can be a very, very different aesthetic if you lean into like the Ymetrica, Stone Guard, and cows and stuff. And I think both of those armies actually have gas. So that's interesting that those can split so differently. So
yeah, totally. I'm really hoping that in the next couple of years, whenever the Tyrion side comes out, that the Venari will be able to be used in both armies.
It feels like that's what they're leaning toward, right? That's the strong core of all of the
agreed.
All of those forces. Yeah. So once we get Tyrion, he'll have his own elite special troops, angel elves. And then but you could also just use the Venari, which would be cool, because then I can buy that army and only use the angel elves and fire the rest of those stupid high elves right off the roof.
Yeah, I mean, that's the side that I'm looking forward to the most. I'm just really excited to be able to run anything high elven-ish, right now. And honestly, like having built and started to paint a lot of those models, they're gorgeous. Like they're beautiful sculpts. I mean, those Dawn Riders are some of the best cav in AOS, period, in my opinion. And the way that the the wardens look all ranked up with the spears, even if they are a little impractical for gaming purposes. They're just gorgeous models, and kind of fun. They're very rewarding once you finish a unit.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tom, what about you, man? How goes the trees?
Trees. I have a tree.
Nice. Nice. Yes, you made progress since last week, so I'm giving you credit. Wonderful.
I have a tree.
Hopefully we see more trees.
Okay.
Keep at it, Tom. That's okay. That's hobby time, buddy. You're getting it in. You're doing the work. Keep in your happy place. Stick on that terrain. I can see right now from literally where you're sitting. I see unpainted terrain behind you back there. Look at that. Get out one of them watchtowers and build something cool. Those are good pieces of terrain you got up there. You have terrain that people would kick their grandmother over to get their hands on. It's just sitting on top of your shelves unpainted.
Oh,
I'll give you a hard run for your money on unpainted terrain, Tom.
That is a true statement.
I literally so y'all know Anthony Pocastro gives me he just pipelines terrain into my house, and we played a game not long ago.
You
and he walked in. What's that?
You got to do 100 tables.
Right. Well, and he he walked into my game room and goes, "Whoa, there's a lot of terrain in here." And I was like, yeah, it's a lot. It's literally like coming out of like every single crevice that you could have in the room. It's intimidating every day.
So could I give another recommendation then to you, David? I'm
Sure.
gonna go back to a pick of the week here, just to pop something else. I'll need to make a note to myself since I didn't have this, but I'm gonna mention this. Okay, are you guys familiar with Marco at Not Just Mecha? Do you know who this is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's a great channel, fun dude. I want to talk to him sometime. He's over in Ireland, I believe. Never talked to the guy. Seems like the coolest dude. I'll reach out to him at some point. Great hobbyist. He recently did a video on spray cans, how to properly use rattle cans. Okay, and look, I'm gonna be honest. He blew my mind with this video, because he talked about how he's like, okay, here's your bargain basement dollar store spray cans. Never buy these. These are trash. Get rid of these. Okay. And then he was like, okay, now here's your sort of, hardware store, Krylon bottle, stuff like that. He's like, these are about the same quality as that Chaos Black stuff you're going to go pay $15 for or whatever. It's all about the same level of quality. Okay. And, whatever. These are okay. They're okay. Now, let's talk about the top. You can go to the art store, okay, or the craft store, and they sell, artist spray paint, okay, in artist spray paint cans. And the key with these is they're cheaper. Those artist spray paint cans are cheaper than, buying Chaos Black or the Army Painter cans, okay?
Because Chaos Black is a racket.
Absolutely.
It's just, yeah.
So you can get a higher quality spray paint at basically about half the price, okay? But you can also order tips. Those artist cans have removable, switchable tips, and he takes you through how you can use the different tips. All right, and he's painting terrain where everybody can picture the Azurite ruins or something with the little flat floor piece or something, and then you got the wall next to it. He's literally flipping it up and using a normal rattle can to paint the floor, turns it back down, and basically no overspray has gotten on the wall. Okay.
Wow.
Because he's using the right tip. And he walks you through and you can just go, and he said, I'll include some links. He has all the tips that you can go buy. You can go buy 100 of these different tips for a couple dollars because they're just little plastic tips. He's like, everybody else in the world who's an artist knows about this stuff, but in the miniature painting world, we don't know. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I do not know this. And I was so excited to learn stuff. So yes. You need to paint all that terrain. He goes through painting terrain, and it looks amazing off of just a rattle can because of how he's manipulating it with the different tips that gives him much better control over the nature of the spray paint.
Interesting.
Well, that's really cool because that's the one thing about rattle cans. Well, amongst other things, but they're very wasteful. You spray with a rattle can, you half of your spray pattern.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not hitting anywhere near your model. So I try to spray with lots of terrain pieces side by side, so at least the overspray kind of hits things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's super interesting.
It was great, and yeah, there are various little needle tips that will actually tighten the spray pattern way down, and all these different. He walks through them. I'll link the video. I'll afterward talk to me. I'll share the video directly with you, so if you don't have to go to the description, David, or whatever. But for everybody else, I'll put it in the description. It was a it was an epiphany for me. I've got to say, like Marco's videos are all great, but that one was crazy. So there you go.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm getting back excited. You know, when NashCon was like canceled and everything, as with all events are canceled,
Yeah.
I was like down in the dumps with like hobby motivation and stuff. I was like, well, I'm definitely not painting any terrain right now. But I've seen some stuff from Anthony recently. He's got some new elf kits that he's been printing up. He's got this one like 14 by 14 elf hall that's like this like giant like it's incredible, and it's got me like salivating to get back to terrain painting, which is a problem for my other projects.
Sure.
But,
well, hey, now you can whip through those terrain projects fast in an interesting and new way. So there you go.
Yeah, totally.
For myself, my hobby time has been spent working on a kit that I've grown to hate more than almost anything I've painted in recent time, and that is these Chaos Knights. So this is the sort of last kit I have hanging out for an actual army I have. I don't have anything. Like, I have a couple other things that I'll want to work on. But this is basically, these 10 Chaos Knights have been hanging over my head like the freaking Sword of Damocles. I kept putting them off. And finally I was like, well, the Giants are going to be coming soon. I'm going to get these things done. Now, actual look-wise, we all know these new Chaos Knights are incredible. They look amazing, right? We all think that. We're all on board. Modeling-wise, these things are a nightmare. Putting together these 10 Chaos Knights took me 7 hours or something because they are so complicated in the way the pieces are arranged. It'll be a third of a torso plus half a leg plus the upper one arm. That's one piece. And then the other piece is another, quarter of the torso, and then you're supposed to attach the head to that. Because then you have to put the back of the torso plus a third of the cape on. And you cannot subassemble these things because, for example, the shields are connected to part of the hand, not the whole hand, part of the hand, okay? That is also connected to a big string that is then connected to half of the horse's head, okay? And if you tried to subassemble these, the gaps would be massive. You'd have to cut them apart and then take off pieces, which, by the way, I was snipping pieces off of these. All the extra dangly heads and stuff they've got hanging off, those are all gone. Cut those off immediately. That's just extra crap that does not need to be on here, okay? And then actually painting these things is ridiculous because they are full of just all these spots that you can actually quite clearly see, right? Normally I say if you can't see it, don't paint it. So I'm not talking about, like, behind the shield, up here under the shield. I'm not worried about that. I wouldn't paint that anyways normally. I don't sweat over that kind of stuff, right? There's no way I can turn this model to see that. But his torso in here is extremely visible. And yet, getting a brush into this space is not at all reasonable. So these guys have been driving me crazy. But we're going to get there. We will get there, okay? I will defeat these stupid Chaos Knights. That is what my commitment is. I will master them.
So you're not doing your 30 Chaos Knight list?
Well, I'll have 15 knights in this list done and painted after this is done. So that's pretty good. I mean, 15 is good. That lets me get what I want on the table. That lets me run the battalions I want. I mean, I already have a 2,000 point army in that list, or in that force, so this is just adding to it. But it'll give me the battalions I actually want to run. So, anyways, yeah, it's Martin said now Vince understands the pain of the new Dawn Riders. Okay, I'll openly admit I haven't assembled a new Dawn Rider yet. There's no way they can be this bad. But maybe they are. I don't know. These are real bad. Although, there we are. So, at any rate, yes, I will not be defeated by some stupid model kit. I will crush these things. So we're just working. That's what we're doing. And their armors, the way I've done it is I normally will paint a model of completion, each one, except for the medals. But this time I'm taking it to just the armor because I had to do a lot of value sketching over them to be rough and get paint everywhere. Then go back in with the airbrush to actually smooth them out. And then I have to go back and clean up all of the airbrush work and re-highlight everything and blackline everything and then edge highlight everything in the armor. Then I'll go back and do all the rest of the details. So there's effort. I'm in the middle of the black lining, highlighting, and smoothing phase with the brush right now. It'll go quicker once that's done. Sean asks Lance or ensorcelled weapons. It's Lance all the way because that's the only thing that these guys come with. They don't come with an ensorcelled weapon options. Only the old knights came with options. The new knights do not come with options. So there you go. Yeah. So did not like this kit. That is they are some of the most gorgeous models once like in look that are one of the most nightmarish things I've put together and painted in a long time. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I know they can make new models that aren't like this. See all of the Slaanesh range that I painted recently that was gorgeous and easy and fantastic and fine. Keeper Secret's one of the best models I've painted in years and years and years. An absolute masterpiece. So, there you go. Yeah, Whiskey Tango said new video idea how to deal with unsub-assemblable models. Brute force. That is my answer. That is the solution. So, there we go. All right. So, gentlemen, with our hobby time out of the way, shall we turn to our topic tonight, which is fixing the Idoneth Deepkin? So, at a high level, let's start with a high level situation. David, what do you think overall the problems are with the Idoneth Deepkin? Obviously, this is one of our pre-AOS 2 books. Came out in that same time period as, let's call it, Legions, Nurgle, and Daughters of Cain. It's one of that series of 4. It's probably going to get adjusted in the upcoming Morathi book, given the art we've seen. But what do you think the problems are right now with it?
Well, so maybe I'll start with what they do well. So we start with a high note. So
sure.
I think they're one of those. They're a book that's older, but is still definitely competitive in certain builds, especially in a shooting meta. Mm-hmm. They're one of the few armies that can weather some of the really gross shooting armies that are starting to float up to the tables. Mm-hmm. However, they're kind of more and more skewed towards one specific build, which is all around very aggressive play with eels. Mm-hmm. And I think, that can be some people don't mind playing like that, but it leads to the army playing in one very specific way, with primarily one kind of model type. Yep. And to the complete disregard for the rest of the range, which is a gorgeous range, and with some of the most interesting, even if you don't like the aesthetic, but it's definitely some of the most unique and interesting sculpts within AOS, with Eidolons and Leviatons and all of that. And you just never see them because they're not playable in a competitive sense. And so I think at the end of the day, Idoneth suffer from some of the worst internal balance in AOS.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a, your final statement there is how I would absolutely summarize it, right? They are some of the absolute bottom of the internal balance list right now. They have basically 2 standout units, right? And that's what most of your army is made of every time. Like the vast majority, if not your entire army, right? Yep. All right. Tom, anything we didn't hit there that you would touch on? I've got a few other thoughts, but I want to give you a chance.
Yeah, they're just hero selection is just forgettable.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Like it all just kind of blends together, and there's nothing really stand out or desirable.
Because the Eidolons are consistently overcosted and underwhelming,
right?
And low tan is forgettable, and so on and so on.
Yeah, like maybe a Tidecaster. That's fine.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. No, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this more in depth, I'm sure. But my biggest gripe with the army, one of my biggest gripes, is that they have one command ability basically in the army. It only works in one battle round.
Right.
So there's even if you had one command ability like orcs, right? Orcs do have their WA, and no one's complaining about it because you can use it whenever you want, right?
Right.
But with Idoneth, it's all right, you got one shot, baby. Better hope he doesn't die. Right. Otherwise, you're down to re-rolling 1s because that's what or battle shock immunity, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. I would also I would also just point out some other sort of systematic issues that many people, echoing what many people in the comments already said. Their battalions are built in the old style battalions of just we're going to divide up the army into these things, and they're going to be boring and tax filled, and they're pretty bad. Their sub factions are clearly from the time period before they knew exactly how to write sub factions, right? So they're just not well balanced against each other. They don't have the right opportunity costs built in. They don't. They're very samey. They don't have their own personality in a way that if you look at, say whatever you will about the Seraphon as a book, and what I would say is it's an S tier army with a very underpriced, overpowered dead frog at the head of it. But the reality is their sub-factions were great because they had real personality, right? You looked at them and you went, okay, Thunder Lizard's cool. This is the monster one. It does monster stuff. It helps monster stuff, right? This is the Saurus one. This is the Skink one, right? This is the Caster one. Like, I get it. I get what the type of army this is speaking to here. These are very, very weak in how they're actually pushing you out. And for the most part, it's like, well, I could get reroll ones to hit on the charge in this one in this way, or I could get reroll ones to hit on the charge in a different way in this one. Great. Why do we need all of these? What are these doing? They're not justifying their existence, right? And then just the final point is that, which I think, echoing what you said, Tom, is this is an army of 6 non-hero units, right? That's what we're talking about. 2 units in Amarty, 2 units of eels, right? Turtle Shark. Okay? And so basically you have 4 actual units, sorry, right? Because the Namarti are basically the same, whether they've got bows or they've got swords. They look like Namarti. The eels are eels, and I couldn't tell the difference between the two in any event, right? I have to have my opponent tell me which one they are, and then when they say the name, I go, cool. Now, was that the offensive one or the defensive ones? Because their names are just inscrutable, right?
Yep.
And so in an army like that, you want to rely on the heroes to have a presence. And I think that's the real part of it that's so offensive, is that I agree with you, Tom, their heroes are forgettable, but it's deeper than that. It's that their heroes don't even have the presence they should in the army when you look at what's written on the scroll, right? They're not interacting, and they're not, I'm like, what are these guys doing other than Mr. ambushing +3 to movement guy? Okay, I got him. He's got his role well defined.
He does a thing.
Got it. I might hate it. I hate the way his thing is structured. Okay.
Yep.
But at least he does a thing. I get it. I get what he's doing.
He's not Lotan.
Right.
God.
Even
justice for Lotan.
Sure. Well, we'll get into Lotan. We're gonna fix Lotan tonight. But I look at the rest of them and it's like, what are these guys even meant to be doing? What in their mind was the role of this thing, right? Other than perhaps Volturnus, who's just there to like literally use his command ability one time on round 3.
Right. Well, and I think you said it earlier about the enclaves, but a lot of their abilities are just duplicative with things you can get in multiple enclaves, like just reroll ones in this way, or reroll ones in this way, or if you're within this many inches, you get the reroll ones again. It's just like the same rules over and over and over again. And at the end of the day, when you're building an Idoneth army, is this hero worth more than X amount of Morsar Guard? That's the equation you make for all the time. So you look at an Eidolon and you're like, well, I could take this really terrible hero, or I could take 6 eels.
Yep. So, yes, as somebody just said, the necessary pro said 3 times. Sorry, he's there to use it 3 times in round 3. I apologize. You're absolutely right. Yet another silly thing that's still there of his command ability still stacking. All right, we're going to start at the foundation of this, guys. Here we go. Let's get into the fix. Boom. Step 1, the tides. Okay? The tides itself. We're going to start here because in my mind, this actually needs fixed. Okay?
Okay.
I don't think the tides as a like the idea, cool concept, the tide coming in and rolling out, like super neat idea. This was sort of a thing that was clearly bouncing around the studio at that time as this like, hey, every round we'll do a thing. as Nurgle had the wheel moving, and Doc had the building blood rights, and then they got to IDK and they had the tides. It was just like something in the water at that point in time that they were like, what we need is round by round allegiance abilities that are firing off. That's the ticket, right? And so they'll get an idea in their head, and just 3 books in a row will come out that are all using that kind of concept, right? Okay, so the tides, just to refresh this for everybody, is a round-based allegiance ability that in turn 1, everybody in your army, assuming you don't flip it, we'll talk about that. I'm gonna leave that off the table for now. We're just gonna assume standard tides. In round 1, everybody in your army is treated as being in cover. In round 2, your army can run and either shoot or charge. In round 3, you can cheat, where you have high tide, and your entire army is like activation wars, ho, and all fights at the start of the combat phase. In round 4, then you can retreat and either shoot or charge, and then table starts over in round 5 plus. So you go back to low tide effectively. Okay, so I don't like this ability. I don't like any of this at all. I think fundamentally one of the biggest things you need to do to this army is change this. What's happening on this table? I like this conceptually. In fact, I would go so far as to say, as I love this conceptually. Right? Thematically, it fits so well. But high tide and what it does and the way it participates in the activation wars and what it's adding is so incentivizing to just play your entire game to fight during basically 1 or 2 battle rounds of the game, right? That it's very tilting toward that. Okay. I also don't love that this ability you get in low tide, which we can talk about either fixing this or fixing the turtle, but they should not both be giving cover. Like, it's one or the other, guys. It's one or the other. All right. So, does anybody have any thoughts? First of all, do you agree with me that this table has challenges? David, let me start on you first. That we could improve this table.
So, I'm actually interested to hear what you have to say to change it. This is not something that I was keen on, that I keyed in on as a needing a major fix. I actually, maybe it's just because I like the concept so much that I'm kind of like forcing myself to like the rules. But I really like the concept, and I don't mind it. And I've said this before, but what I really hate is that your only command abilities are further pushing you towards that one play style of like optimizing your round 3, or if you pull forward your round 2, and making you bank on that one round of the game to do all your work. And what I prefer is like just keep the table maybe the same or tweak a few things, but then completely revamp your command abilities so you're not trying to just like double up, right?
Yeah, I mean, so what I would add to that, David, is that like as it stands right now, 2 things, like this is bad Doc. Okay.
Thematically.
Well, I'm just not that. Like mechanically, Doc just gets so look at what Doc does. You get a tide ability every turn and it just stacks forever.
Sure.
So what you get in turn 1, you get in turn 2, and you get a new thing in turn 2. And so it's just bad Doc, from that standpoint, and it incentivizes a linear play style, which is what you've identified. Either your play styles are this: go all in on turn 3, or go all in on turn 2.
Sure,
that's it. Like that is the heart of the play style that this entire army revolves around. And that's problematic.
Yep.
So here's where we're going to get controversial, because here's my ultimate supposition: to fix this army, we got to start by breaking it down. This is like training Rocky. Okay. We got to start by making this a more well-rounded army, something that has lots of different ways it can play. And what that ultimately means is high tide's got to go with what high tide's doing. Okay. High tide's participation in the activation wars and the whole like we all fight at the start is generally this sort of poisonous thing that chips away in a just ridiculously large way and over incentivizes it. So I actually think I could keep low and flood and ebb and whatever, but I got to get rid of high tide. Okay, I don't like the entire army fighting at the start of the combat phase. It's too much. Now don't worry, I hear everybody. I hear everybody freaking out. I hear you freaking out, and I understand why you're freaking out because I'm taking away your best toy. Okay, but I want to give you lots of other toys, and getting rid of this is going to open the door to all of that. Okay.
Yep.
So, what? But like, I love the idea that at high tide they're at their best, right? This is sort of their most combat effective, or whatever we want to say, right? So, to me, what I would do with them is you pick some other buff, okay, that makes sense within high tide that you can give the army that makes them combat effective, especially stuff that's going to mean like, okay, you're in it, what's happening there, right? That's going to make you win. You can pick any of 10 different buffs that'll all make sense. Like you could give the entire army something like reroll hits, or you could and we'll fix all the rest of that rerolling ones to hit later because we're gonna fix all the sub factions, we're gonna fix all those abilities so they're better, right? Whatever. You could give the army all just +1 attack, so you don't have to use your command ability for that, and you're like just that's what we're all doing anyways. It's just getting +1 attack, right? So let's just give the army that flat +1 attack right there in turn 3, and give all the heroes real command abilities that actually shape the way you play and can give you different play styles. Besides needing to rely on that to buff all your people up to combat efficacy. Does that make sense? Yeah. And the point is, sure, somebody said like increase rend. Yeah, sure, I could absolutely see increasing rend, right, or something like that. Yeah, 100%. Like you all get +1 attack and +1 rend. Like, that could be cool. Something like that.
Or +1 rend, +1 damage.
Sure, absolutely. Yep. Just something that isn't as poisonous as the activation war thing, right? Yep. And I know there's some people in the comments who are not loving what I'm saying right now. That's okay. I understand. I get it. I get why you would hate this. I understand. But we'll get to good stuff. The thing I do want to absolutely keep, and I think is strong in their allegiance abilities, I love Forgotten Nightmares. I think there's no problem with it. Everybody complained about it when it first came out. I think it's actually perfect, and this army should always have it. I think it's a wonderfully unique tool. I think it is a great gatekeeper for shooting armies. I think it's fantastic. Yep. Never want it to go away.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, that's so like in my mind going forward, I've replaced High Tide with something else. Okay, like a +1 to attack, or whatever.
Yep. Okay. Because now you can actually give meaningful abilities, because that thing skews you so hard that like you can't add synergistic other toys without completely upsetting the entire like suite of abilities.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I'm all for changing up the what things happen in the tides. I just don't want to give up that tide like mechanic altogether. So yeah,
I like the tide mechanic as a concept. Yes, I want to keep that.
Yeah, I do. I think I may be mistaken here, but I think GW has kind of signaled that they want to get out of that. They kind of went too far down the rabbit hole of the activation wars. Like that was possibly a mistake. And so, this could maybe herald in that new age of maybe not so much of that always strikes first or whatever, or attacking first in the combat phase or whatever. And maybe there's a new fact book that comes out also that can do away with even more of the atrocity that is striking first in the combat phase.
Right. Exactly. I think if we get rid of this High Tide, it gives us a lot of ability to do other things, and we can put on other buffs that don't go, oh, well, the entire army's going to fight first with +3 attacks in one turn of the game, and we've got to be really careful about what we allow them to do and explode in that one round. Right?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Right. Then the only thing that will remain is Fire Slayers.
Well, I hate them too. All right, so cool. I'm not going to dig in. We're not going to dig into like artifacts and stuff like that. I do want to talk about rituals for a moment. Okay?
Ugh.
Okay, tell me about rituals and why that was your response.
That you forget them most of the time because they are imminently forgettable. Because
they're not a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally maybe they go off, I mean, a lot of times you don't even have the models to get the bonuses because, like we talked about at the top, you don't care about heroes so much, and you certainly don't care about to have your Soul Scryer near a boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so like maybe you remember and maybe it goes off, but they're so forgettable that they're just words written on a page that never actually happen.
Right. Or sometimes they randomly do, and then you accidentally cripple a whole army because you took away flying from their entire army or something like
Right.
that, right?
Yeah, it's what they have like great, very good benefits. Like the like losing fly for a whole army is huge. And,
Yes.
yeah, it's like sequestered it in a weird way.
Yep. The problem with so I completely agree. I do not. I generally like unique mechanics. I'm literally stuttering over my words because this part makes me so crazy. One, I shouldn't need an abacus and like a 4-year physics degree to figure out my exact bonus to cast the ritual. Okay, way too complicated. I don't know who wrote this wall of text of the bonuses you get and thought, oh yeah, that's a thing people will be like players will read and be able to calculate easily. No, 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 no. You you have priests in this army. Okay, so here's the solution for rituals. You ready? They're just prayers. They're just prayers, and they're not as big. So like you can keep all the same stuff, all right, and it can be the same things or whatever, right? It can be a heal ritual and a cover removing ritual and a removing flight ritual, but they're just prayers, and they go off on a 3-up on the priests, and they have a pretty decent range because I don't want your little priest staff to get too close. So I want them to have a nice long range, right? Maybe like 24 inches. You can pick a unit, remove its fly, or pick a unit, it's no longer in cover. Pick a unit, you heal the wounds associated to your eidolons or whatever, right?
Right.
Easy. And by the way, it wouldn't be one wound; it'd be like D3 or D6 or something actually meaningful.
Meaningful.
Yep.
Right. And there, now you have real priests and real prayers and their abilities that are on there, and ta-da! Like that's fixed. It's just that easy. And again, the interesting part here is that it would give those characters an actual purpose because they would able to, pretty reliably get that off. And if you wanted to change it so the priest, if they're near the boat, they get +1 to their cast, much like the corn priest can re-roll, or the or get +1 or whichever one they do. I don't remember if they're near their little blood altar and so on and so forth. Yeah, great, fantastic, wonderful. Like I love these effects. Just make them usable in a way where it's not like a slot machine that either does nothing and is forgettable or cripples the enemy army.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It's just too big of a weird slot machine to pull on. So there you go.
Yep.
That's like such an easy low hanging fruit solution. I'm generally loath to pull really interesting, unique mechanics out of the game, but sorry, you went too far here. We gotta wheel that back in, right? Okay, cool.
There's tech that we already have that does this thing.
All right, next thing, and this is the last thing that's gonna be a theoretical nerf, I promised. Let's talk about them shipwrecks. You didn't think I was gonna let you off of this, did you? Shipwrecks. All right, here's the new rule. You ready? It's this simple. You get one boat. You get one boat. It can be 2 halves you put wherever, or 1 full boat. That's it. Those are the rules. It's not 2 boats. If you like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The rules now. It's 1 boat. 1. Okay. Done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about placement rules, though.
Okay.
How about we make them place it like every other terrain in the game?
Meaning?
9 inches away from everything else. Or 6 inches.
It's 6 inches, you mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
Like, no more creating choke points.
Just like building it right up against stuff.
Yeah. And making me travel 14 inches to travel.
To walk over things. Sure. So,
yeah.
1 boat. You get 1 boat. Okay? Enough of this. The thing I hate most about your terrain piece has literally nothing to do with what the terrain piece does in its scenery rules. When they set it down, they're like, oh, this can cause wounds. And I'm like, I could care less. All right? What I care about is that you just sat this ridiculous model that I've got to walk like this around because of its insane shape that's going to add all the movement to my army that I just might as well not even try to walk over it. Thanks. Great stuff. Great, absolutely great stuff. And there isn't
Or
terrain pieces that work like this
or
otherwise,
you say that it's an ethereal boat because it is,
and people can just walk through it.
and it does not hinder movement.
Sure. Like any model is treated as having fly when they move across the boat. Sure, that would be the way you do it.
Yeah.
And so there you go. Like, but that's it. I don't want to change. The boat's fine. Other than that, whatever. Cool. And it would buff the priests, like I said. So if you did happen to have a priest near it, cool, give them a buff. So you could choose to put the boat in your own deployment zone for like a bunker that your priest can kind of hide behind and put extra movement so ground pounders can't get to them as easy, and give them a bonus. Or you can put it over in their zone and still annoy them with one boat, but you can't annoy them with two boats, cluttering up their entire deployment zone. So okay, cool, done and dusted. Not even. I'm not. This one's not up for debate. It's one boat. I don't know how this ever happened. It's one boat.
I'm not even gonna try. That's fine.
Can we do like one boat and you can summon one?
No, it's one boat. We're not summoning boats. Okay, it's
I mean,
one boat.
like Sylvaneth can summon trees.
Oh.
Let them summon boats.
Sorry, I do have one rules change for the Gloomtide Shipwreck that would actually make it a little more scary. You ready? You know how, like, if you're standing near it, you roll a die, and on a 4-up, the unit takes 1 mortal wound, and on a 6-up, they take D3? I hate things like this. I hate things with bifurcated rolls like that. Extra rules complexity on something that is largely forgettable. It's just straight 4+ D3 mortals, done. That's it.
Sure.
One boat, but it does mortals a lot more. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There we go. Mm-hmm. All right. Great. So I'm just jettisoning all the sub factions right now. Okay?
Yeah, or as Necessary Horo said, it talks about etheric vortexes on placing etheric vortexes, but we never see this concept show up again ever.
Right.
In anything else. Just give them non-boat options.
Well, I mean, there would be endless spells in a perfect world where this was redone, right?
Sure. Well, what about, okay, well, wait, building on that, what if the buff changes to be like, so I have a thought about Idoneth being kind of like an anti-techless, despite them being allies for some reason, which
doesn't make any sense, but yeah, whatever. Yeah. I'm with you.
So we'll just act like that's not a thing.
Sure.
What if the boat was a minus the cast or something?
Oh, yeah. Sure. I could deal with that, yes. Great. Yeah. So buff for you or a minus to cast. Yeah. I'm like, yep, I'm with that. I think that'd be great.
I would love Tides to do that. That would be a really neat thing that could sit in Tides, right?
Sure.
Well, yeah. Well, that's we'll get to it, but that's my thought for the Eidolon of the Sea.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're gonna talk about them Eidolons. They're gonna get some work put in. So here's what I want to talk about with the sub factions. I want to go through and rebuild each of them. Do we all agree that the sub factions as they currently exist could be jettisoned and we could recreate these?
Yep.
Okay. I'll give you the quick high-level pitch for my sub-factions. Okay? Here's how I would run them. Here would be my idea. Okay? So, we would have a Domhain-esque sub-faction still. And it would be largely Achillean charge focused, right? Domhain would be it would be the one that, like, this is your eel thing. It buffs eels. It does good stuff with eels, right? Mm-hmm. And what it would give them would be just their sort of generic rule, okay? Would be just +1 to charge. Okay, that would be the all Achillean units get +1 to charge. All right, so including the king. And their command ability would be reroll all hits in a round where you charged. Okay. And their, like, magic item and command trait. The command trait would be something about killing monsters, and the magic item would be something that's, like, meant for the king to wear that's, probably aggressive. There you go. And that's kind of what I would see Domhain as, right? So it's the Achillean focused one that would make that gives them better reach, lets them reach out and get places, and gives them just full on reroll hits. That's where they're getting their reroll hits from, right?
Okay.
So sort of bigger than its current reroll hit rolls of 1, right?
They also have a reroll wounds in. Are you talking about Domhain or?
Yeah, talking about Domhain. No, I'm talking about Domhain at the moment. I mean, both, and that's one of the problems. Like, Domhain and Futhin both play in this space because they both can include up to 6 Achillean corpse. Domhain is more like the monster hunter one, right? Yep. So I'm just kind of we could call it Futhin, we could call it Domhain. I don't really care,
Yeah.
right? We can,
Okay.
but we have this Achillean one that's all about like charging Achilleans across the board, being deadly, hitting into people. That's your sub faction for your sort of current popular playstyle. It goes in, it hits hard, it strikes right, effectively and accurately. And also I like the little monster killing thing, and I would throw that in as just a command trait because who cares? So like that's neat. If the king is there and the other Achilleans are next to him, they get some big buff against killing monsters, like +1 damage against monsters to the general and any Achillean units within 6 inches or something like that. Whatever, something like that. Sure. I think that'd be really cool as a command trait. So that'd be really helpful against stuff like Nagash and other big beasties in the world, right? That are monsters. Perfect. Does that seem like a reasonable sub faction?
Yep.
Okay. Next one, I do a monster core. Okay. And the monster core one is going to be focused a lot on turtles and sharks and making these things highly effective. Okay. That sub faction is going to turn on sharks as your battle line units. All right. And it's going to give them general buffs with their melee attacks, right? Not their ranged attacks. It's going to encourage it's going to make them into more oppressive melee combatants, where the turtles and the sharks can get in there and do some real work, right? So probably like bonus attacks. So again, like if you were in the monster one and you're on your high tide, again, I'm counting that as +1 attack. Now your big turtle bites up to like 3 attack space, right? Or something like that. And I love when you can start putting stuff together like that to really get at an army concept, right? I don't think this would ultimately be the competitive build, but I think this would be a super fun build that would motivate the heck out of people, because who doesn't want to drop on the board with a bunch of sharks and a couple turtles and go ham?
Well, and maybe have it build like stack up or build up the bloodthirsty predator rule from the Alpex, which right now is pretty lackluster. But make it something that's actually pretty scary.
Yep. Absolutely agreed. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. That it would we're going to take that rule and improve it when we get to the sharks, and this would be a super version of that.
Yeah, right? I mean, because it's a great theme. Like the theme of that rule is amazing, but the actual rule is pretty meh.
Yep. And then I think it would be interesting. Like, there's a couple of we don't necessarily have to follow the exact breakdowns of the troops, but the other one that I thought of that would be kind of interesting to build out in a sub faction would be a more classic. I almost want to call it like blue-white magic deck. So it would focus on maybe like the Ishlian defensive eels and the Namarti Reavers, the bow guys. Okay, Reavers. I think it could be, because we're going to improve their shooting and stuff like that. Maybe you could have a little skirmishy shark shooting in here too. That would be fine. But the way I'm thinking about this is the way that sub faction would want to play is to use the Ishlian the ethereal Ishlian to pin people, to hold up their army, while your skirmishy Reavers run around and pick the army apart behind the lines. You understand what I'm saying? So it's using the kind of ping damage to bring the army down. Like I said, we've got to make the sub faction alone can't lift the weight. We'd have to change the war scrolls here too, right?
Right.
But it would allow that type of play. Like, it would increase the movement of the Namarti Reavers, or give them a skink-like retreat ability, right? When someone charges, so they can just get the heck out of there. So make them evasive, like that kind of evasion, where they can just retreat straight away when they're charged, right? Give the Ishlian ability where people cannot retreat from them, right? Mm-hmm. As long as they're in combat with them. But basically force them to fight your defensive eels by just being stuck there, right? They'd have a swirl of combat ability in this, where it's units may not retreat from, Ishlian guard or something like that. I love those kinds of abilities. I think those are absolutely game winning, and this would be your skill tester sub faction, right? Where somebody somebody who really understands the movement element of the game and really likes playing in that space would have so much to work with here.
Yep. Right? I love that. That sounds great. And actually, it's funny. I actually wrote notes for tonight, and one of them was give Reavers the skink ability. So that you're speaking my language.
Yeah. I think this is the sub faction you do that in, because I think if you give it to them generally, it's a little dangerous, like that ability, the retreat out. But doing it in a sub faction, I love, because then you got to make a commitment, right? You're saying this is the buffs I get, this is the way I'm playing, and you know, you could have a couple sharks floating around doing their thing, shooting off at people. Like you could make a general statement about ranged attacks in this. It could buff all of those things. Like there's just lots of ways you could feed into that in this sub faction, right? In addition to us upping the war scrolls, and that just seems like the coolest faction to play, because that would open up a whole skirmish mode for Idneth. Something that's just not there right now, but it feels like the way that they would attack. Like when you read their stories, this feels like how they fight. They kind of sweep in and hit, and they're skirmishy around, and then they go and they hit, and then they fade.
Yep.
Right. So that seems super cool.
Yeah, I mean, Reavers are like one of the coolest like looking units in the game to me.
Totally
I think they have that like very skirmishy, lithe kind of aesthetic to them, and yeah, so I think that would fit really well.
Yep. And then whatever else, I don't have a fourth one. Those were my three.
anti magic. That's mine. That's the one that I would go on. Like something that focuses on like some kind of thematic, like to get back at Teclis, they're trying to take away magic, or their whole stealing of souls. Right. So
I like it. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm into that. I want to do you a step farther. Okay. I want to yes and you here, David. Okay.
Good.
And I want to give a -1 to not just magic. I want to have something in there penalize priests, enemy priests casting.
Yeah,
because this is one of those few armies that has both arcanists and sort of like wizards and priests. And I love that idea of where they not only have protections against sort of magic, but also against prayers and can penalize enemy priests. That's just not a space we're playing in right now. And priests are just running around. They've been living on the high horse too long. They've been too good for too long, and Idneth having a way to like actually sap that power, right? Because priestly magic is soul magic.
Right.
That's what it is. I've played Soulbound. I know how this goes. Priestly magic is powered by your soul, right? And that's what the Idneth are interested in. So it would make sense that they're the ones who would have the tech to not only stop magic because of the Ether Sea and everything else they're doing, but to also stop priestly magic.
Yeah, exactly. And they might, just how they're kind of a counter to shooting, maybe they become a counter to these like mega powerful spellcasters.
Yep. Love it. There you go.
I'm okay with them not having very strong magic as long as they can take away magic from someone else.
Dig it.
Yep.
Dig it. Tom, anything else on the sub factions? Anything we didn't hit there?
Nope, I agree with all that completely.
All right. We're not going to do battalions. Just make them better. I mean, you know how to design battalions. You've proven that, as sometimes books have good battalions. Just make good battalions. I don't know why I need to say this. Okay. So, let's talk about them Eidolons, boys. So, is this maybe one of the greatest models that's ever been made by GW ever? Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
These Eidolons are incredible. They're incredible models. Hence, it is heartbreaking that they are as bad as they are. Right?
Yeah.
So, we've got two of these guys. We've got Melee Guy and we've got Caster Guy. Storm and Sea. Right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys have been overpriced forever. And I'll tell you right now, gentlemen, here's the funny part. I brought up their scroll today for the first time in a while. Like, I haven't looked at the Eidolon scrolls in a long time. And I brought this guy up, okay? And I was like, are they really that bad? I was like, are they as bad as everyone's saying? Because in my head, you kind of have this conception in your head of what they're at, right? And these guys are still deep into the 300s of points.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I read the Melee Eidolon, and I started laughing so hard because I was like, what is this?
Yep.
Looking at it with fresh eyes after probably a year of not having looked at this scroll in detail, I was aghast. Okay.
Yeah.
It's tragic is what it is. Like so my last look was more recent because I was looking at one point this past summer when we were having that lull of where Lumineth may not be released till forever, and I was sitting here like I'm looking at my like shelf with Idoneth, like man, I would love
We get
to
it,
drop an
Matthew.
Idol.
They should be 100 points cheaper. I actually have a different suggestion, but I love your spirit. Okay.
But it's not even about making them cheaper. Like I think there's a point where you can make something so cheap that it's like you flip the scales too much. They need to have just better rules, and we have the tech to do it. Like look at the Spirit of the Mountains, like the or like a Bloodthirster or anything that's like a beast in combat and also a monster. Like if a Bloodthirster runs up to your lines and smashes into a unit, you're like well, that unit's probably gone, right? If an Eidolon of the Storm hits your arm, you're like, okay, well, I'm probably gonna take 5 damage. you
Yep.
know?
He's like a 250 point hero.
Yeah, it's just yeah. So they just need a rewrite wholesale.
Okay, I agree. Here's what I'll say. I love these dudes at around, let's call it in the 360 to 400 point range. Okay? I think that's where they should be priced in this army because it should be one of your big, impressive, cool things. This guy's scroll is so far away from that. So far. Like, people like Matthew was very, very aggressively saying 100 points cheaper. I don't think that's enough. I'll be honest with you. Okay? I would deduct them even more than that.
Hence my 250.
Right. Instead, I want them to be this good. Okay? So like we can write a scroll worth the points. It's not like we can make monsters that are worth this amount of points. All right?
Yep.
So let's actually do that. And it's cool that this guy is a sort of 12 wound monster, right?
Yep.
That I'm using monster in quotations because I understand he does not have the monster keyword. Please don't. I'm actually me. That doesn't have a chart. Like that's a cool idea, right? Great. I love the concept base. 12 wounds on a 3-up save. Okay, pretty good. Not bad. That's a 12-inch move with flight. Like we've got some good base numbers here, right? The foundation of this is strong. But if this is the melee guy, all right. Futhan Spear of Repressed Fury, 2-inch range, 4 attacks, 3s and 2s, neg 2 rend, 2 damage, right? And on the charge, he gets to reroll hit rolls of 1, so he's 3-up rerolling 1s, and he goes up to 3 damage, right? And he can also charge and retreat. Cool concept. Not enough. The number of attacks in this guy needs to the damage should go up to 3, and the attack should go up to 8. That's just to start. Okay, on that spear, or 6 and 4. I'll take some mix of that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then his little Kroll hook or whatever. That I hate weedy little attacks that that are just sort of like here's a bunch of rolls that don't actually do anything. Hate that. Like I get it, the shoal. I'm fine with his little fishy friends attacking. Like okay, whatever, fine. But if you're gonna give a big guy, if you're gonna give a big guy like some kind of thing, right? Then the weapon should be valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, I understand he also has rerolls to wound because of his own aura. I understand, Oliver. I'm just not mentioning literally everything because I'm going to change that reroll to 1 ability. I was talking about the base thing. All right. So we're gonna that cruel hook. First of all, we're upping its damage to 2, right out of the gate. Monsters don't get damage 1 attacks. All right. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make that big cloak actually give him a 5-up feel no pain. Okay, a 5-up after save. So this guy can withstand some amount of punishment. All right. Secondly, his aura right now of being this little 9-inch reroll 1s to wound because he's a utility piece or whatever. I'm jettisoning that. All right. I love this dude as a solo actor. To me, his role in the army is he is a solo beatstick bully.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
Either be the melee monster or be a utility hero. Don't be both. Right? The Ghoul King on Terrorgeist isn't passing out rerolls to ghouls. Okay? He's killing things. And that's what I
Yeah.
want this guy to do as
The-
well.
The turtle should be your utility tech piece.
Sure, or other heroes. Like I think the
Or-
wizard is the big one who
Yeah.
should be more focused on
Yep.
like the utility buff role because he doesn't
You
want to
could
be
do that as well.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. You mean the C or the
Yeah,
Tidecaster?
the C. Sorry, the
Yeah.
C. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Eidolon of the Sea is the utility Eidolon. This is the
Yeah.
melee beast Eidolon, right?
definitely.
Next thing I want him to do is this guy needs to deal mortal wounds in some way. All right? And so on all of his attacks, okay, any 6 he rolls to hit does a mortal wound in addition to everything else. And I've upped his attack number way up, right? We're making way more attacks because he's ramming this spear through you. I would take alternate builds of that. Maybe the spear, maybe the Futhan spear. Maybe it's like on a 6 to wound, that attack just becomes mortals. We go Keeper of Secret style, right? It just does like 3 mortal wounds or something like that, or 4 mortal wounds or whatever.
Yep.
Maybe we go a direction like that, okay? But the point is, we're gonna up this guy's damage through the roof, right? And
You mean no? You're just making him worth his points.
correct, yes, to actually make him worth like 360 points. Make him like a so he's not as good as I'm not trying to equal the Ghoul King on Terrorgeist or something, but he's like a 360 point melee dude who can get in there and do that damage and have some survivability through the 5-up after save, right? He can still keep his little pulled into the depths ability or something like that.
Sure.
Or pulled into the depths could be a lot cooler.
Yeah.
And it could be the way if I was going to make that cooler, I would make it the axe, the reality splitting axe from the like Corkus Cull model, the Khorne Chaos Lord, where at the end of combat, if he damages somebody, right, you roll a die, and on a 5-up, enemy hero, I should say, hero or monster, let's do it that way. If he damages somebody on a 5-up, you roll it, they're pulled into the depths and they're slain. If they're wounded but not killed.
Yeah, I had the pulled into the depths as like a can't retreat type thing. Like they pull you down and you can't retreat away.
Mhm.
But I kind of like obviously the Corkus Cull ability is awesome. So
Yeah, and I just think that would be he's like the master of the tides. He's got this whole ether sea at his command effectively, right? That he's riding around his little wave, getting somebody just literally pulling them in and sucking them in and just they get suffocated and pulled out to sea. Like what a cool concept to that dude to have, right?
And it would make
more
him a
offensive.
real threat.
Yeah.
Regardless of damage, it would make him a real threat that has to be dealt with.
All right. Any other things we want to talk about with the storm?
Nope.
No.
That would be that'd be good.
Okay. David, why don't you launch us for the sea? You mentioned some ideas you've got, so talk about the sea. How would you change the Eidolon of the sea?
yeah, so I agree that so right now the C is just he's not doing anything well. He's the caster of the Eidolons, but his spell's on a 7 and he basically gets no bonuses to cast unless he's in one enclave. So like sure. And so he kind of isn't fulfilling a role, and so I really like it. So the role I would see him being is in that buff support class. I like the idea of him being able to kind of broadcast out offensive buffs. I still like the idea. So Futhan did something interesting, which is changing the tides, and that is interesting. And if you take away the egregious nature of battle round 3, where you get to attack first, then maybe moving around those tides isn't so bad anymore.
Right.
And so I actually thought an idea for the Eidolon might be interesting, where you can use a command ability to change the tides for a round or something. I don't know. Something interesting in that regard. I've said it a bunch of times, so I'm kind of broken record at this point, but I like the idea of an anti-magic or anti-prayer or something that kind of utilizes that kind of soul energy that Idoneth are supposed to be built around. So they're harvesting the souls. So something in there might be interesting as well. But yeah, I think just building him as a support character that you can sit back and use to buff the rest of your your army is the right play.
Yep. I love all these ideas. I think he.
I think-
Oh, go ahead, Tom. No, you go.
No, I think you could do something with like ether seed, manipulation or something along those lines, and play in the like I love the Lord Celestant +1/-1.
Yeah.
Sure.
To casting, and I would love if he could like you could do something like the magical tides of the Ether Sphere or whatever, and he can basically +1 or -1 casts every hero phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. To me, what I would actually give him is just a once per game ability, like Scragrot. Yeah, I had to think of his dumb name. I was going to call him Skarsnik, but that's not right. Where he can either hold the tide or advance the tide. Okay, so that's not a command ability. Like literally, just that is just an ability on his war scroll. It costs nothing, right? Once a game, he can do this thing. He can either hold the tide or advance the tide one step, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think his command ability is like I think is a sort of Master of the Ether Sea, like Master of the Ether Sea, where he pushes out either a big bonus to cast in a bubble around him that affects himself and the other casters, or a big negative to cast, as you said, Tom, right? Where it's like he can suppress magic and prayers of the enemy, right? And
you
if
could
you got enough
like
command points, sure, he can do both. Right?
Master of the Ether Sea tidal currents or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I love that.
And so if you got 2 command points, sure, he could fire off both.
Yeah.
Right? He could be bonusing himself and punishing enemy casters. I think his bravery buff is like who gives a crap. I would definitely I would lift and shift that other ability from the other Eidolon right over to him, because this guy's meant to be in the back line, like buffing people or something. I would extend that aura way out and make it Holy Within, but I would make it a huge Holy Within off of his big base, right? And probably just make it like reroll, ones to wound, or reroll ones to hit and ones to wound, or something like that,
Yeah.
And then he's got the ability to actually cast spells, right? Because he can give himself bonuses. Again, if we're gonna do the boat bonuses things, if he's standing near a boat, you could give him another +1 to cast or something like that, right? Or whatever. The boat could act as arcane to the Idoneth, in the same way that that Gnawholes act as arcane to Skaven, but deadly to everybody else, right? I would have no problem with that, especially if we're down to one boat, right?
Yeah.
So, and then this dude becomes a very competent caster. He has good utility he's passing out to everybody else, and he has an interesting reason to exist, right? Because he is manipulating the tide in a way that, like, oh, why am I playing this guy? Because I want to play with the tide manipulation, and I want to put a big utility buff piece in the middle of my army, right? Yeah, I'm down with all that. Okay, cool. We're not gonna go blow by blow, hero by hero here, obviously. Okay. But there is a hero that I want to talk about. All right. And that is like one of the coolest looking little dudes. One of the coolest looking little dudes who is very underwhelming, and that is our Soul Render. Okay.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Lotan.
Oh, well, no, we're gonna get to Lotan in a minute. Lotan,
I was fully geared up to talk about Lotan, and you switched. You faked me.
I faded out. No, I think the Soul Render is like a really cool looking guy. I love his like big hooky thing that he's got out there, and his little, he's got this little lure light and stuff. So I think that's a cool concept. But this guy is sort of refilling Nomardi units. That's his thing. And Nomardi are bad. Now, if we make Nomardi good, maybe that has a point on its own. But I feel like there's other stuff this could be doing. Like, what would you change anything about this guy? Let's assume good Nomardi. We haven't gotten to him yet, but let's assume he's there. Okay. What is there anything you'd fix about the Soul Render?
Oh shit! I just pulled my headphones out. So
okay.
Yeah. So I think So I agree that refilling Nomardi probably isn't super compelling, and it may not even be compelling if they were good. What I think is interesting is there is a lot in the book. There's a lot of like debuffing bravery kind of throughout the book. The problem is that bravery is kind of a joke in most of the game, because you can just say you're immune to battle shock most of the time and get out of it. Or a lot of armies are just inherently immune to battle shock.
Right.
What I think is interesting, and the tech already exists, is with like Caradron or someone else that can make you instantly take a battle shock test. If you had a way to build a list around maybe the Soul Render and somebody else who could make you instantly take a battle shock test at a negative, then you're kind of playing in a different space and you kind of get into the like Terrors of the Deep stuff that Ivaneth play in. I think it could be interesting. I like him as like a little like mini executioner walking around the board
Yeah.
as well. I think it could be a fun place to play.
Yep. The other thing I would do is I would up his melee some because he does
Yeah.
seem to want to be also some kind of melee based hero, and he just hits like a feather right now.
Yeah.
You know, with his look out for those 2 attacks. You know what I mean? Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
It's why would you even write a hero with 2 attacks? Like that's nonsense in every way, shape, and form. So I would definitely up his attacks. Give him like 4 or 5 attacks, right? Something to that degree. And he's got that big giant hook thing. You know what? Give it a rend of -2. Let's go nuts, right? Then he can actually do a little bit of damage. And if he's you know, working as you mentioned as well, I think then he's actually a cool. I think he's actually a cool hero in that regard.
I'm gonna go a different direction.
All right, I'm ready.
I'm gonna throw the priest keyword on him.
Okay.
Sure.
Because like if you read it, they're the taker of souls, the reapers who claim the life spirits of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, he's not a priest?
Right. Sure. Because the soul scryer gets to be the priest, right? Yeah. Sure.
Right.
There's no reason why both of them couldn't technically be a priest.
Right, and then give him priest tech.
Okay. All right.
Like if he's a support piece that's refilling models already, why don't we just play in that tech, and it could be the more offensive. Instead of being the utility priest, he is the offensive priest.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I'm down with that. I like that. That's a cool take. Yeah. Kind of more where he has more of like actual attack prayers or something written on him.
Yeah, so think like his like the hangman's knot that he has and all that. Like you could do all of that in the sphere of priest. So think more like death hags.
Yep. Sure. Where he
Or
can
like
either self buff or cause some mortal wounds or something like that.
Yeah, like yes.
Yep. Self buff to be better in combat or just deal some straight mortal wounds. Yeah. I like that. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
All right, now it's time to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, the Lotan. All right.
It's been so long since I've looked at his war scroll.
Oh boy. Well, you should do that. Talk about writing the most attacks on a guy that doesn't do anything. I love how this guy has 4 different attack profiles that all amount to nothing. That's pretty great design when I have to roll that many different dice to accomplish nothing.
Well, and he's a named character, right? So he's
And
not
he's a
going to get
named
any
character.
artifacts.
Yep.
He just gets hit from all sides. He's just terrible, like across the board. Like I think I said on Twitter one time that I would literally I would prefer to just have a command point.
Right,
Like-
absolutely, yes. In the comparison between Lotan and a command point wins every time.
Yeah.
But let's build this guy out. What are we going to do with Lotan? Okay. So clearly he's not our melee hero. He's a little bookkeeper scribe dude, right? Like, I get it. So that's fine. But I don't know that we needed all of these attacks. Like, did we need the bone quill actually on there? Did that need to be a thing? Or can he just not fight and he relies on the octopus to fight? You know, if Kurnothi bow hunters, if their melee attack is just the little dudes next to them that hold their arrows attacking or whatever, you know, like maybe we can just call it a day. So maybe Oktar is the one who actually fights. You know, that's the
you
octopus.
see like Oktar's flailing implements or whatever.
Sure,
Right.
yes.
right.
But let's get that down to 2 attack profiles: Oktar's weapons and Oktar's tentacles. Got it. Okay, cool, neat. I'm with it. All right. But what does this guy do? Let's talk about what he does right now. Right now, he adds 1 to bravery, and in a obnoxiously small bubble, allows Namarti to reroll hit rolls of 1. Right, and then he also has a 5-up feel no pain, which is hilarious. So what are we gonna do with Lotan to make him worth it? What's our little bookkeeper gonna do?
I actually I don't have many ideas. He's in such a weird position that, and never seen him on the table, that I've never actually seen him have a role, and so it's hard for me to even put a role on him. You know what I mean?
So let me inspire you all.
Yeah. You
And
gonna
I'm
read
gonna
the
read-
actual description?
Yes, like his flavor text, right?
Because
Like,
it is good.
Like in reading this, I know what his ability should be.
I have ideas as well, but go ahead. This is the same. I read this earlier as well, and I was like, how is this flavor text attached to this guy? So yes, please read it out.
Like flavor text, by the way, are the log lines that abilities should be developed out of.
Absolutely.
And so that should be guiding design. But here we go. So named the Warden of the Soul Ledgers, Lotan marches to war with every Idoneth enclave, not only his own Ironrack. So great is his willpower, so vast is his desire to collect souls, that it manifests itself in the Ether Sea. This mystic cloud inspires all Idoneth Deepkin, but especially Namarti, who will fight with renewed vigor in Lotan's presence.
Yep.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I can fully admit that I've never read the flavor text of Lotan.
All right. So
He's a cloud buffer.
Mm-hmm.
He's associated deeply with collecting souls, and he has a strong will.
Yep. Okay. So right away, a couple people in the comments have already commented as to one direction we could go with this that I was going to mention. And I'm sorry, Autumn Lotus, but yes, the answer is we could take a note. We could crib out of Epidemius's book here, right?
Because he is the Epidemius of the IDK.
Yeah, he's the Warden of the Soul Ledgers. Like, he's just Epidemius, but for these guys, right?
He's counting, yes.
He's counting dudes. And so the more he could just have a profile where he's buffing all Idoneth in a massive radius around him, or maybe just board wide.
The more souls collected.
The more souls collected, that's right. It could even increase the range of his buff or something like that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Here's what and that's fine. Like, we could go that direction, but here's actually what I think would be, and that's fine. Like, I have no issue with that because you could build that out.
Yep.
If I was going to play with Lotan, though, okay, like what they seem to want to do with Lotan, and what Lotan seems to want to be, right, is the Namarti guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. The Namarti buffer.
The Namarti buffer. Okay.
Yep.
So if he's the Namarti buffer, then let's do that. Let's enable that playstyle.
Well, right. Can I point something out though? Like, he's the Namarti buffer, but we already have one of those.
We do, but he can. The
full render is the Namarti returner.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I think you could have this guy buff them in an interesting way. Okay.
Yep.
So it says that, like, Lotan's, mastery of the Ether Sea sort of inspires everybody, and they keep going, right? But especially Namarti. So let's take his crappy 12-inch bubble and let's blow that way out. Okay, let's make that like a Holy Within 24. He's a unique character. Let's actually make him feel like that. All right.
Yep.
And if we're not going to go just the Epidemius route, which is the sort of default way, right? So instead, what we do with him is he makes it so the Namarti are better at whatever they're doing, more inspired to be good at what they do. So within this 24-inch range, okay, Namarti thralls gain +3 inches to their movement and gain +1 inches to their reach. Okay.
No, because that just needs to be an innate ability on Thrall's War Scroll.
All right, fair enough. We can if we're gonna put that on the Thralls themselves, I'm okay with that. In all honesty.
Yes.
All right. I was gonna recommend some other ways to fix Thralls that wasn't increasing their reach, but that's fine.
That's my only fix for Thralls. That's it.
That's fine.
Period. Full stop.
So we agree that somewhere there needs to be +1 inch to the Thrall's reach, whether we're doing it here or there.
They have giant pole arms and like humongous weapons.
Yes.
Like, come on. It's ridiculous.
Yep. But I love the idea of him making them faster. So he makes all the Namarti gain. By the way, we can do this for both both the thralls and the reavers. All Namarti gain +3 to movement.
Yeah.
Thralls, let them keep maybe the reroll ones to hit or something like that. That can be a good buff if it's in a big range. And Namarti thralls are good. And Namarti reavers, okay, he adds to their range. All right, so he lets them he adds another, I don't know, 6 inches to their range of both of their attacks, right? So the Stormfire actually works out to 15 inches, allowing them to really skirmish and pop at without being so close to the enemy, right?
Okay.
And then when we get to those scrolls, if we improve the bow shot and we improve the Namarti, now he's a good utility piece. He's your Namarti guy who's there, and he's making them a lot faster. Again, I love the idea of these dudes trucking because they can move easily in the Ether Sea.
Is that where you would end it?
Probably. That's a pretty huge shift, and he's not that expensive.
Well, and I hate piling too many abilities on a really weak character because you're banking on a lot of things happening, and he could just die like that.
Right.
So what I would say is this: I would go one step farther, and I would say that Namarti units wholly within his Ether Sea bubble are Battle Shock immune.
Yeah,
I thought you were gonna say that, Tom.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it. I was like, no, Tom will say it.
You could either Bravery 10 or Battle Shock immune. I would take either one.
Just make him Battle Shock immune. It's fine.
Sure, Battle Shock doesn't mean anything anyway, so why not?
Yeah, Battle Shock doesn't mean anything. And then because Bravery 10 has these other weird side effects, it actually ends up skewing a bunch of other things that Battle Shock immunity makes them it gives them defense against Lumineth, ironically enough.
And it gives them defense against a bunch of stuff, but yes, I get it.
Right, and it doesn't have this weird effect of the Terrorgeist scream makes them more defense. Battle Shock does what we want it to do.
That's fine.
But what I would say is, I would almost be tempted to key that to kill count or something, even though I understand that that's probably not wise. It's not good design.
Sure.
So I think the Battle Shock thing, and then if you restrict it to Namarti, then you actually create some interesting incentive structures, because especially if you're keeping people off of targeting because of just how IDK works.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be on a weak hero.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Cool. So now let's fix Namarti, shall we? How are we fixing these bad boys? Well, you mentioned the thralls, David. Is your fix just 2-inch reach, done and dusted?
That's it. I like the rest of the scroll. I think they're interesting infantry. They don't need to have tons of rules. I think their rules are already good, and I think they're beautiful models with tons of movement in a unit with these giant weapons that somehow they can only hit right in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem with thralls is that you tag one side of the unit and they're never gonna all get in combat with their 32-inch bases. So that's it. I think maybe increase their points by 10 or 20 points. Increase the range 2 inches. Done.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, they're fine.
I tend to agree. Honestly, I think that for the most part, they're right where they should be, except they need a 2-inch reach. Because the 32, again, our perfect world is not to put them on 25s. I know a lot of people were saying that in the comments. Yeah. I want infantry off of...
That's what Lotan's supposed to do, put them on 25s.
Yeah, I want infantry off of 25s. I hate how much it skews the game when infantry is on 25s. That's the Marauder problem. Let's not make new Marauders. Okay.
Yeah, they also don't fit. If you've built thralls, they don't fit on 25s. Their feet are too far spread apart. They would probably barely fit on 28s. So I think 32s are where they need to be. And they look good. They look good on 32s, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, okay. Now with the Reavers, here's my answer. Their bow shot attacks need to just be better. Yep. Why are they on 4s and 4s? Why are they just the terrible bargain basement? Average starting archer of Ungor. Okay, why is this the number?
But the biggest joke about Reavers is they have an aimed shot ability that has the same to hit roll.
Right.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah. Put these guys bow shots on 3s and 3s for God's sakes. What are we doing here? What is our discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
moreover,
get with the volley fire, I get it. Like you can that can maybe not hit quite as much, or I don't know.
Yeah, it shouldn't. They should hit base on 3s, volley fire on 4s.
Sure. Yep.
I would move their wound to 3 or something like that. Or if you want to keep their volley fire on 4, or sorry, their aim fire on 4s and 4s, then give that one rend. Okay,
Yeah.
make the aim fire have rend.
I just have a really hard time.
Fire have be on like hit. Honestly, I would put both of them just hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, okay, or something like that, or even 3s and 3s on one of them, and I'd give the aim shot rend. And there you
Sure.
go. Like,
yeah, I just have a hard time with anything that tells me that it's an aimed fire and it has the same to hit roll as the thing that's not an aimed fire. It's just like I have my brain has a hard time comprehending it.
Yep. Well, I people are saying they're blind, but they don't have eyes. I would like to read you this tiny bit of their flavor text. It says, despite their eerie and disturbing lack of eyes, the Numarti Reavers are uncannily accurate. Well, 4s and 4s ain't uncannily accurate, folks. Sorry.
I guess uncanny is just in the eyes of the beholder, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I guess by the standards of a normal person who cannot see, they are quite good with their bows.
Whoever's judging their shooting competitions is like, yeah, y'all are great.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting much worse. That is uncanny how average you are. So yes.
Most of the arrows went in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. I would also probably the other fun thing with Reavers, and there's a couple different ways we can get at this. Obviously, you can do it through the tides; it's there. But something in this army needs to allow them to, or in that subfaction I mentioned, these guys would run and shoot, right? So just like it doesn't need to be on their scroll, but it should be like in some of the things we've mentioned. Run and shoot for these guys should be a thing. Again, make them more skirmishy.
Well, and something that always frustrated me with building lists is, and maybe this is not the right design, and I'm fully aware that might be wrong, but one of the things that's interesting about the army is Soul Scryers bringing in models from the edges of the table, and then the first units you go to, like, oh man, it'd be really cool to bring Reavers on the edge of the table, and then you're looking like, oh, well, never mind, their good shot can't actually happen if you bring them on the edges of the table.
Right,
so it's,
right.
It's like this whole part of the game that you think should happen and doesn't. And maybe that would be too egregious, but it doesn't feel
move
like
that
it.
range to 10 inches or 12 inches. Let's call it 12. There you go. So that way you can actually fit some of them in. Yep, 12 inches. That's the answer. Totally agreed. Hadn't thought about it, and you're right as rain. Because then that makes it so there's actually another interesting unit to ambush with. It isn't just more eels.
Exactly.
100% agreed. Yep. Okay, cool. Great. Let's see. What have we talked about yet? What we haven't talked about yet. By the way, I think the shark is kind of in an okay place. I'm kind of okay with the shark, and I think in the things we've already talked about, like if you had a monster type subfaction that did shark buffing, and you like with the shark, I would want to buff out, like you mentioned, their bloodthirsty predators. It's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
But that would be easy enough to fix. Just make that ability slightly better is what I'd say. Cool. Let's talk about the Leviathan. We need to fix this turtle, right?
Boy.
Okay. First things first. First principles. Should this turtle be like a 400-point monster or a 200-point monster? Right? How much of a monster is he?
I think it's a monster that becomes two monsters. I think they should build in a hero version of the Leviathan, like they've done for other kits, and have a version that's more expensive with the command ability and all of that, and have a version that's less expensive, but so that's my opinion. And they already have like a model on the back of the Leviathan kit that could easily be a hero.
Absolutely. Just pull the old commander on Steam Tank or Skink Chief on Stegodon or whatever, right? Pull that maneuver. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So but my first principal question was like just trying to define where we want him to sit, right? Because you can decide, well, the turtle should be like a cheaper component of the army. So what we actually need to do is kind of maybe pull some stuff back or whatever, but then get him down into like the 200-point range. You know what I mean? Like that could be a way you go about designing a monster like this. Yeah.
So you mean just leave the War Scroll alone?
Or you can say no. We need to buff him up to kind of fill his space, right? And get him up into like the 300s or 400-point monster. It's a question of where you want it to be in the army, right? Is it a centerpiece that probably you'd never see more than one of, other than somebody running a fun, skew army or something, or is it something that's just kind of like, yeah, you might see a couple of them because they're kind of around, right? And I think those are two different roles monsters can fill, and they're both valid. But it's important to understand what's your goal with the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, with a name like Leviathan and what you're going for, and just the size of this model, it feels like it should be the bigger version of the thing, where there's kind of like they bring one turtle with them to the fight, right? That's what they're bringing along. They got their one turtle. Okay. Okay. What does this guy do? How do we fix this scroll?
So I like the like defensive bonus of like the Leviathan kind of provides cover. I think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the providing cover goes against what the army wants to do, because when you charge, you don't get cover.
Right.
And so if you're running an army that loves charging and being really aggressive, then having a Leviathan just doesn't fit ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd prefer to just be a +1 save, like just period.
Okay.
But I'm not sold on that. It could be an after save buff, or something like that.
Okay. All right. Tom?
Well,
Go ahead, David.
I had one other idea, which is like, could you incorporate like a slipstream type ability where, like, if the Leviathan completes a charge, then all the units within X amount of range get to reroll charges or get plus something to their charge or something like that, where like they're actually like following in the wake of the turtle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the turtles from Finding Nemo, basically.
Literally, that's where the idea came from.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally, dude.
Okay. So, all right. I mean, interesting ideas, Tom. Any thoughts there?
So I'm gonna say something unpopular.
Okay.
I don't think the Leviathan's range on the cover thing should be 12 inches.
Okay. Yes, right
Yeah.
now he's got a wholly within 12-inch bubble around him that makes it be cover. Yes.
It's just huge.
You're saying
It's
that's not big enough, or it's too big?
It's too big. Just from my grokking, right? Like, because what I'm trying to imagine is that they're taking cover under like the edges of the shell of the Leviathan,
Okay.
right? Like,
I mean,
And-
it's actually more like supposed to be currents that the drummer guy is sending out, but I get what you're saying.
right, but like, and so I just have a problem with how it's grokking. And so I would actually reel in the defensive buff, but then grant other things.
Okay.
And so I like the charge buff. Like, I like the wake. I would also like make him hyper defensive,
Sure.
like 2-up unrendable or something,
Sure.
and say that like he always has to be the target if within range.
Okay.
So like you make him the hyper focus of the army. Does that make sense? So like if you have him and you are in range, you have to attack him. Like engrossing nightmare or something like that, right?
Okay.
Where like normally the ability for the army is you have to attack the nearest enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and I would make them attack him.
Okay.
Like in magic terms, he has a lure on him because he's so big and scary and terrifying.
Maybe it happens on a roll similar to like a locust or something.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I would be okay with that too. But the idea being that like give him another interesting, like let him play with that, like let him play with the targeting mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like playing with in some of those other spaces.
Sure. I mean, we've got, when you talk about roles, right? So if we made our big utility Eidolon, because all these guys are going to clock in the sort of like 350 to 400 and change point range, right? That's what we're saying.
Right.
So, if that's what we're talking about, we've made our offensive bully in the Eidolon of the Storm, right? Yep. We've made our big utility guy in the Eidolon of the Sea, right? Who can cast magic and is passing out a bunch of good buffs and playing with the Ether Sea, right?
Yep.
So it feels like what this guy should be doing is yes is your let's call it defensive, your army anchor point, right? By the way, I love Hero Turtle. I'm all in for Hero Turtle, 1,000% Hero Turtle. Yes, 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 and twice on Sunday. And like his command ability should largely help things like be probably defensive, right? Because that's kind of what this guy's all about.
Right.
It's a turtle.
Yep.
Turtles are defensive things. Like, they have big shells. We get it. So it all crocs. There's this sort of like Melvin aesthetic liking thing there, that's happening, right?
Right.
Where the design would meet the rules. So I love the idea of him sheltering in combat, right? And he should be a super anvil, and he should want to be in combat sheltering the other troops. So I think the core of your idea there is good, right? I don't know if I'd make him unrendable. Maybe he's 3-up and he ignores some amount of rend or reduces all rend by 1 or 2 or something like that. But I love the concept you're driving at there, right? So some mix of that kind of thing. Up his defensiveness. Yes, agreed, right? I'm not a huge fan of the like aura of +1 to save, just because I've seen where that goes with the with the Daughters of Cain, and I hate it there. And the first thing I do fixing Daughters of Cain is I would strip that +1 to save off of the cauldron so fast it would make your head spin. Like literally that would be change number 1 I would make in the army. The murder wagon, all about murder, that celebrates murder and is dedicated to the god of murder, should not give a defensive aura buff. At any rate, this guy, if I was thinking about what he was doing, I love what you're talking about, Tom, of playing with priority. The other ways he could be doing that, by the way, is just suppressing attacks in the area. Like, I think of Turtle, the Flash enemy, right? Who just goes really slow. And so he could literally just be, as he moves forward, the Ether Sea around him, he just kind of slows it down. And it ends up being gummy as he thickens the Ether Sea, because it has to be really thick to support him. And so, like, the enemies within a big range of him or that he's in combat with all get neg-1 attack, right? Or something like that. So he's just this big living, debuff that's there protecting your troops, right? If I was going to give him the same kind of Void Drum aura, it would just be a Mystic Shield. Like, we can talk about what the range is, but it would, if you want to keep that concept, just have him give out an aura of reroll 1s to save. Then he himself can also benefit from it as well, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just the low-hanging, easy fruit. And then you want to get this guy up there, and he's sort of the defensive shield that's marching with the rest of your army, right? So when you go in, you stick him in, but you want other guys there, and he helps your Namarti, who are not very defensive, stay alive, because he's giving him a built-in Mystic Shield, he's taking away the enemy's attacks, right? It's a very powerful effect, depending on the range that he was broadcasting that neg-1 attack, but it would give him a real reason to be played, right? Because he would be the enemy debuff monster piece in the army. And now you've got all 3 big monsters having a defined role, right?
What if this may be a different direction. What if they play on like a sucker fish mentality, where like sucker fish sit on the side of sharks, right? Where he's like a carrier of like Namarti, where like he can drop off, kind of like carriage on boats.
Oh, sure, let him garrison him and just ride forward.
Yeah.
That would be a super cool way to go. Here's, in a perfect world, we'd have multiple builds of this guy, because you don't have to put because the turtle is its own model. You don't have to put the thing on its back.
Right.
So in a perfect world, you would match the spiders of the Geats, right?
Yeah.
Where they have like the War Party one and the Hero one and the Standalone one, right? And they all kind of have different roles. So yes, in a perfect world, you could have like a blank one that doesn't have the single, the drums or whatever on, but he's just a transport wagon. He's just literally like, Namarti just jump on him and ride, and they're like, yeah, woo, let's go, turtle power. And they just, they fly into combat on him, garrisoning him like a boat. You could have this version that we talked about that could be like the standard war one that's them driving around using the void drums, debuffing the enemy, and then you could have the hero one that's more about using, like, being a commander and actually targeted defensive buffing people.
Totally.
That, like, this guy has that potential. This kit has that potential because they built it the right way, just like with the big giant spider, where the extraneous stuff isn't a required part of the build.
Right.
So we have the freedom to do that. I love that idea, Dave. I think that's fantastic. right?
Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then you've turned this army that is lacking on scrolls. Let's be honest, right? Without introducing any new model kits, we've turned one scroll into three scrolls, all with different purposes.
Yep.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig it, man.
And it's a really cool model too. It's a model that like you don't see very often.
It's
And it's
so gorgeous.
yeah, yeah. It's the model that everyone saw in the preview and was like, oh, like lost their minds over.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think it's generally agreed to be one of the biggest crimes that this thing isn't seen on the table when it's such a gorgeous model.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else do we need to talk about eels? Like in this, so let's ask this question. Here's our eel test. Ready? In the world that we've created, where Namarti are more offensive and have both a sub-faction and heroes that can quite directly buff them, as well as a big turtle who could defend them, where the Reavers are actually useful and can put out some shooting pain in a couple of ways, right? Where the Sharks have a much better blood in the water ability and can do damage either on their own or even in a super buffed way, right? Where the Eidolons are really offensive and scary or really utilitous and useful, okay? Have we done enough? But remember, we now have one boat and we've removed High Tide. Do we need to do anything with more Sargard? Or have we balanced them out by just saying, well, now there's other choices and eel skew isn't the right answer all the time? Or do we need to rein in eels in some way?
My initial thought was that people were going to want to see us kind of revise more Sargard. I think Ishlan are fine. Not like the defensive eels, I think they're fine. More Sargard, people have such a bad taste in their mouth, but it's for the things that you talked about. Like they can stack all those attacks round 3 or round 2, and they all fight first. Then your whole army's gone. Mm-hmm. That's the main. They pop their mortal wounds, do all that stuff, and I think that's what makes them so egregious. If you take away some of those pieces, they're probably not so bad. The one thing I thought of that if you did want to potentially give them a slight nerf. Mm-hmm. Was to reduce their armor save to a 5+ instead of a 4+, and make them more like glass cannony.
Yep.
So that you further refine their role to being that hyper aggressive offensive unit. I'm not sold on it, but it's just what I don't want to do is, well, what I wouldn't want to see happen is like them getting nerfed to oblivion.
Right. I don't want that either.
Yeah, and then people are left because people have made huge armies out of only eels, and then they're back to the Karajan problem where you have all these models that are now no longer good, and that's not what anybody wants.
Right? Yeah, I agree. I mean, I told you at the start I'm going to make you throw one of your boats in the trash, or turn it into a generic piece of terrain for your table. So chin up. But I agree. Like I want more Sargard to still be, because to me they're your speedy offense unit, and that's a good role. Right, like that's a completely valid role. There's nothing wrong with that. Like as them being this sort of offensive damage dealing unit, that's a good unit, right? And they have a built-in challenge. They're elite, so they have a problem holding, like Namarti, if they were actually good and challenging, are theoretically better at holding objectives because it's more bodies, right, and that kind of thing. So we get it. I think the 5+ save's kind of an interesting idea. You could, one of the things you could do is you could turn their biovoltic blast. Like I'd need to math this out. I don't know if this would actually change anything or not. I bet like you could make their biovoltic blast work more like the Stormcast shock. So like right now it's on a 3+ and it's either 1 mortal wound, or on a 6 it's D3. You could make it like 4+, it's 2. You could kind of standardize it in that way, right? So it's a more flat, non-swingy number. I don't know how that mathematically would balance out. It'd probably make it a more static, predictable number, right? I haven't done the math and to really think about what that means yet. But yeah, I don't know. Like my honest intuition would be taking away the High Tide and the ability to just like super stack attacks probably does most of the work on its own, and you probably wouldn't have to change them anymore, right? Like I think that with the buffs we've given everything else, with just those minor nerfs, they're probably in the right place. Because it's only when you take their like Volt Spear attacks up to 5 or something, on turn 3, that it just becomes absolutely egregious that each eel writer is making like, you know, 5 3s rerolling something, 3s rerolling something, -2 rend, 2 damage attacks, right?
Yeah.
But if they were stuck there making 3, that actually feels like a more reasonable number, even keeping the Bioboltic shock, right?
Right. Yep.
So I think it's just when you get to the super stack on the Volt Spear that it actually becomes a problem. And if we've removed that, they're probably in line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not to mention the bites and the tails of the eels.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
that,
sure.
that also gets them.
Yeah, 100%. Yep, can't underestimate the Maw. The Maw jumping from like 1 attack doing D3 damage to 4 attacks doing D3 damage is like, it does work. Might not have rend, but it does work. So,
Yep.
100%. So honestly, I don't think I'd change the eels at all. I think with the rest of our changes, eels are fixed and are they become a valid part of the army because you can't just go all in super stack turn 2 or turn 3. I make a million attacks and kill your whole army or I lose.
Yep.
Right. And I think that just wouldn't be the case anymore. And I basically keep the eels how they were. You know, I think that feels right. You might need to play with points at some element to like, you know, how exactly do the points balance out? Of course, that's a thing you can adjust over time, but who cares? Now you'd have, I think, valid roles for everything when I look around the army. And I would be much more inclined to be building a lot of different armies, right? You wouldn't want to stack just into one thing because you do want to get an Eidolon or you do want to have some Namarti, right? And that the desire to have that is what internal balance is made of, because that defeats skew lists, right? So
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Totally.
Cool. Have we fixed them?
I mean, it's a good place to start.
Sure. See, I told you, folks. I know you weren't with me at the beginning when I said take away High Tide, but like I said, we're gonna get there, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
Definitely. I would love to see a world where you'd see more like mixed arms, Idoneth armies, or just some of the more unique units. I think they just represent something very distinctly Age of Sigmar that other armies don't, even if they are kind of a Marmite aesthetic. Like they're kind of like Caradron in that they're very unique and not the other game systems don't have them, or other fantasy worlds don't really have them. So I think they should. I wish I saw more of them in more differentiated ways.
Yeah. You know, my final thought is one thing we didn't mention, but obviously also add in a bunch of interesting command abilities that suit the playstyles we've already talked about. So there you go. Those can be whatever, just do that. This book, I agree with you. You mentioned at the beginning, but I want to mention at the end too. This book, David, has the same challenge that the Daughters of Cain have, where it's like no command abilities that are valid other than one, and then it's like it does a very simple thing in a very specific one-time way. Just add in real command abilities that actually function in real ways that suit the different playstyles we've talked about. So there you go. Like that, just make that happen. So there you go. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think we did it. Now we'll have to see how our suggestions here stack up against whatever happens to happen in Morathi if the Idoneth get updated. The big question still remains: how far are they going to go with those books? Will we get completely new War Scrolls? Will we get just some new supporting rules? Like, what are they willing to change? Time will tell. All right. So, David, thanks so much, man. This is a lot of fun. This was great.
This was great. I really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. It's in these times, it's good to have something fun and kind of frivolous to talk about.
Yes, indeed. I agree. So for all of you out there watching, thank you so much for watching. As always, do please hit the like button. Just swing your mouse over a few inches and hit that. A lot of you have already, and I really appreciate it. Liking the show helps other people find it, which is great. And it really helps us just build the audience, so we very much appreciate it. David, thank you so much. We'll have you back again. Absolutely, if nothing else, I'm going to see you in person at Adepticon next year, because that is definitely happening, and I refuse to believe otherwise. So
Absolutely.
And then we'll follow that right up with us being down at NashCon, and it's going to be an awesome 2021. I look forward to 100 tables of spray-painted terrain that you've done using Marco's new method.
I can't wait to get that link.
Absolutely.
Shoot me the link, baby.
I will. For all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next Wednesday.